Okay, I'm getting started, guys. So this is a new song. I'm doing a recording now. So we begin with I Met a Girl from Derry Garve. So itself is quite interesting. Derry Garve, I looked it up, is in County Mayo, which is on the west coast of Ireland, again, where my family come from originally. It's the most Irish-speaking part of Ireland still now, which I think is quite interesting, isn't it? And the name, a lost potent musk. Well, this begins a very extended metaphor that goes throughout the poem, a deeply sexual, erotic kind of moment that's kind of interesting to try to understand. It's as though the language itself is a kind of sexuality to the guy. So the Irish language, again, very often he configures Ireland as female, doesn't he? And sometimes that's in a very negative way, like Bog Queen, where she's violated, act of union where she's violated. But here it's the rediscovery of the Irish language is like a romantic and erotic encounter for him. And we see recalling the river's long swerve. Well, let's just have a little look at this. We've got beautiful Ajamon here going, haven't we? That whole part of this poem here goes Ajamon for 2 stanzas, doesn't it? So we feel the swirling, whirling, flowingness of the river, don't we? Recalling the river's long swerve, a kingfisher's blue bolt. Look at those very strong plosives. Blue bolt, the kingfisher, the strong K, and stepping stones like black molars. That's very interesting because most of that imagery is beautiful and very vivid. And then we have this very odd kind of image of decay. And it's kind of hard to know. Is that because the black molars are sunk in the fjord? Notice that the language now becomes Viking Norwegian, doesn't it? The fjord, okay? So the symbolism here reminds us of the kind of Viking invasion. Is that why we have the black molars and this image of decay? Why is it put in there alongside all of this beautiful, vivid, erotic, sexual imagery? We don't know. The shifty glaze of the whirlpool of the Mayola. Can I remind you of what he said about language? That Irish was the vowels. Say that word to yourself, Mayola. You feel the vowels of it, don't you? Okay? And the only consonant, the English bit of it, is the M, which is a nice soft use of consonants, isn't it? Again, pleasuring beneath the older trees, okay? So again, I have to make an apology. It is a very sort of kind of sexual, erotic kind of poem, isn't it? In which this encounter with the Irish girl and with the Irish language is like a romantic kind of encounter, isn't it? And I have Zara to thank for looking up older trees for me. Correct me if I'm wrong, Zara. This is an old Irish saying. The Ogan tree from the, was it Ogan dialect we were looking up a moment ago? It's a symbol of the tree as a protector, a tree that can withstand water, and a tree that gives you luck on a journey. So again, do you see it's again going into the landscape of Irish myth, rediscovery. Remember that post-colonial thing? Rediscovering your language, rediscovering your land. Okay, now, can I back that up? Yes, look, and Derry Garve, I thought, was just vanished music. Why vanished? Well, of course, it's an allusion to colonialism, isn't it? Now the music has been taken away, but it's still there, isn't it? It's there as a kind of memory for him. And he thinks about all these gentle pieces of imagery, vanished music, a twilit water. And here we have the Sosora. As he thinks of the Sosora pauses us, doesn't it? As he thinks about what else can I compare it to? What other metaphors can I use? And this, I think, is the most beautiful one. A smooth libation. Look at those beautiful, this is what we call susurration, isn't it? I'll put it up here now. Or susurration. I've heard it pronounced both ways. Susurration and susurration. You can have different types of S's, can't you? You can have sibilants that are often hissy and harsh, but you can also have like gentle, soft sh sounds like we get here from the susurration, don't we? Okay, I realise I'm going off the page a little bit there. And of course, the liquid sound, we call the L's liquids, a smooth libation of the past. Beautiful flowing image, as though you can drink the past. And the word libation means a soothing, calming drink, doesn't it? And it kind of conjures up images of King Arthur and maybe damsels and all kinds of things. So here he's kind of lost in mythology and beauty and stuff. And it's poured out by this chance Vestal virgin, Vestal daughter. That was a Freudian slip, because the Vesta, the goddesses in Rome, they were the virgins who had to protect the temple. So it's kind of interesting that he's imagining her as a Vestal daughter, because it seems that he has rather carnal feelings towards her, shall I put it that way? They had to keep the flame of Rome alive, absolutely. And it's kind of interesting because the Vestal, again, would be associated with Rome, which is very much an empire and a conquest kind of nation. Here's our Volta, and you'll see that quite often he's using iams, that's unstressed, stressed. But here in the Volta, he goes to a trochaic meter, and he's using a strong plosive B, but. And we have a change and a shift here with this Volta. Let's have a look. Now our tongues must rise. Look at the play on the word tongue. Of course, tongue could be something in this case that within this semantic field it seems sexual, but of course tongue is also a trope for a language, isn't it? We say, what tongue do you speak, etc. So there you see as I say, the combination of the semantic field of language and the semantic field of sexuality merging together in this way. And they must rise from licking deep in the native haunts. Well, perhaps I shouldn't go into that too much, other than to look at the word native, okay? In other words, native to Ireland. So why is he so excited? Well, it would appear that he's excited by this beautiful girl that reminds him of some kind of Guinevere character, but also he's excited by the language, isn't he? By the rediscovery. So why would this be? Why would it be? Well, in both cases, if we think about language and sexuality, in both cases we have an idea of repression, don't we? And again, I can't in a recording go into too much depth, but we might have a kind of bursting out of that repression, mightn't we? Into all these kind of liquid images, etc., which I believe in Gatsby he calls us the orgastic future at the end of the novel. That's a similar kind of idea here. And going back to this idea of vowels and consonants, he says, to flood with vowling embrace. Why vowling? Because the vowels are Irish, aren't they? So it's like the rediscovery of his culture is like being in the arms of a beautiful, willing girl, if you can see the parallel there. And but this is really interesting. This word is really easy to miss, and it's so important to understanding the poem. This word here is actually pronounced domain, okay? And it is a Norman word. Now, those of you who know your history will know the Normans invaded England in 1066 and they enslaved the English. And the Normans were the first to invade Ireland, not the English, obviously the Vikings before that, okay? And when they came to Ireland and they took the land, they called it domain. So you can see this memory, and of course, do being a really strong consonant. Can you see? So the imperialists being associated with the consonants happened here. And look at that, staked out in consonants. Why staked out? Well, remember what I told you about Heaney, that he's so interested in fences and in enclosures and land being staked out. Now, some of you may or may not know that the word plantations, which you would associate with African slaves, wouldn't you, is a Norman word for the Irish. They put them on plantations. So the first plantations were in Ireland. Again, an interesting idea of how this post-colonial was quite global. So before there were African and black slaves, there were white slaves in Ireland. Okay, so you can see why he would use this strong word. So what we're talking about is smashing down these fences and these linguistic fences as well. Physical fences on the land, but also linguistic fences as well. Now, in the coda of the poem, the final stanza here, listen to this. What does he say? He says, "And castle down," look at these ands, "will enlist, and upper lands." What do you notice about those place names? They're English place names, aren't they? Why were castles built in Ireland? Ireland has some of the highest concentration of castles in Europe. They were built out as fortresses, as police stations, weren't they? So that the sort of Anglo-Normans could control the Irish there. Each planted Bourne. He goes back to an Irish name there, Bourne. Remember? What's his family farm called again? Do you guys remember? Mosbourne, yeah? And each planted, again, that word signals the plantations, doesn't it? So these were the farms that were imposed upon the Irish, yeah? And look what they do. Like bleaching greens, resumed by grass. It's like nature. The bleaching greens, of course, are the Anglo-Normans, aren't they? Took the colour and nature and health out of the landscape. And here, the grass comes back. And the grass are? It's the Irish. It's the rediscovery of your culture. It's the reconquest of your own nature, isn't it? And then he uses this idea of a vocable as wrath and boulan. I don't know how to pronounce that. But again, using Irish words, don't you think? And showing the importance of reclaiming your language, your place names, etc. What is a vocable? A vocable, of course, is this kind of combination, isn't it, between English and Irish. And this is kind of like Heaney himself, isn't it? So what's the poem about? The poem on the surface is about a beautiful girl who you can't get your mind off, but actually is far more about language and history, reclaiming your past and reclaiming your culture. It's a very positive poem. I would put it into the resistance kind of group of poems. It suggests hope, doesn't it? So if you ever get a poem, a title about how Heaney's so bleak and he doesn't see a future, etc., here is a future, isn't it? This is about, reconquest, reclaiming your land, reclaiming your culture, and overrunning these last vestiges of empire.